All right. Thank you for this. Thank you for accepting this interview.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Rasmus, is it? Rasmus?
Yeah, Rasmus or Rasmus in Swedish. Yeah.
Ah, that's a cool name.
Yeah, yeah. Original. When I was traveling in Australia, everyone sort of called me Christmas. That's how they could remember it.
I think if I knew you in Australia, I'd call you Razza.
Yeah. I think Ras is I'm here in Thailand now, and Ras is sort of the nickname I get most of the time. Yeah.
Where in Thailand are you?
In Chiang Mai.
Ah, I spent quite a bit of time in Chiang Mai. I love it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Mm.
definitely beautiful. I've been here for 2.5 years now, and definitely been a big part of my spiritual journey here. And,
I think I did quite a few cooking classes in Chiang Mai.
oh yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
a lot. Very beautiful city, like very beautiful. Has amazing energy. I feel all the temples and
Yeah.
the sanghas supporting the temples and all the monks. So I feel
Yeah.
like it has beautiful energy.
And a hop, step, and a jump to Cambodia.
Sorry.
Cambodia is just over the border.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I Cambodia was actually sort of my initiation a little bit into Buddhism. I had some hotels in Sihanoukville a few years back, about 10 years back, yeah. So I stayed
Mm.
there for a bit. Yeah, we can get into all that, but yeah, it's a initiation into Buddhism. I was wondering why were all these sort of poor people in my eyes? Why were they so content and happy?
Ah,
Yeah, yeah. So I started to do
probably accepting life as it is.
definitely. I start to see the thread there that goes through the Buddhist.
You know, unfortunately, as Westerners, we're not programmed to accept life as it is. We're programmed
Mm.
to resist and to survive. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
very discontent with life, you know?
yeah, definitely, definitely. It's yeah, it's very interesting to watch. And Thais as well, right? Very. I mean, I think Cambodia is a little bit influenced by their past, but Thais have sort of kept it somewhat original, I feel. So it's I feel like a very genuine practice here, a lot of time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I like the feeling up there. I like the feeling all the way through there because it was Buddhist
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they were
definitely.
being kind and they were into being givers, you know, that it was
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's not the same back home. I after I went back from Cambodia and tried to sort of squeeze myself into the Swedish way again. I tried to look for some Buddhist temples in Sweden. There's one small little apartment in Stockholm has a Buddhist, but one monk wasn't much, unfortunately. So
Ah,
yeah. I came across you in the interview with Swaha, and he's Norwegian,
hmm.
and that was a very interesting, little bit of awakening for me in terms of Osho. Osho haven't been a part of my journey so much, and sort of to be honest, that was his image, as you probably can understand a little bit, has been yeah, a little bit tainted from some events. So when I saw you guys talking, it was so funny because you guys started out with I think it was you that said it's not much to say between two awakened people or people, yeah. And I just started to laugh. Both of you started to laugh, and I started to laugh as well. It's like, yeah, it's not much to say. I can see that sometimes, but sometimes I just get caught in my stuff, I guess.
Osho, I learned about Buddhism through Osho.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he talked about Gautama the Buddha many times, so many times.
Oh,
I
yeah.
learned about Buddhism through him, and then I studied it myself because it seemed like a reasonably good way to go.
Yeah.
Particularly Zen Buddhism. I like Zen Buddhism because
Yeah.
I like the discipline.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
I'm very curious about Zen. Haven't been part of my practice so far. It's the Theravada stuff mainly here in Thailand. The Vipassanas here.
Oh, it's totally Theravada up there, but they've got too many rules. Like I'm actually an ordained monk
Right.
for the Vishrant Buddhist Society, and I'm an abbot. But we don't have the rules that you have to wear robes. We're actually allowed to eat meals after 12 o'clock during the day. There's lots of things that I don't agree with the Theravadan religion. One is renunciation, particularly for men when it comes to
Mm,
sexuality, because I think when men aren't ready to renounce sexuality, they become perverted. And I
mm,
think that's not a good idea.
mm,
Um, but I see Buddhism in a lot of ways, particularly with the Theravadins, stuck 2,500 years ago. They
mm,
haven't moved forward. They're still wearing robes and keeping
mm,
themselves separate from the public. And
mm,
I don't see the separation. Everybody is us. Why dress differently than everybody else and make
mm,
yourself special? So we don't wear robes. I have them, but I don't wear them.
mm,
Uh, we do eat after 12 o'clock. As a matter of fact, I'll eat at any time I like, because that rule only came into play because Buddha had so many people following him. If he didn't put that rule in play, the beggars, the monks, would
mm,
wipe out villages after 12
mm,
o'clock.
mm.
Well, that's a ridiculous rule to have,
Yeah.
considering that there's not thousands of Buddhist monks wandering around anywhere.
Mm. Yeah, I've been definitely been thinking about those things. There's one temple I've been going to mainly. So I've done, well, it's one tourist sort of a retreat here, just 5 days, but then the main one is about 1.5 hour south here. It's kind of a famous monk, recognized both in Myanmar and here. He's passed away now, but I've been wondering a lot about the sort of absolute rules about it. And coming from the atheist sort of unawareness, been very sort of confused in that journey, I must say.
Oh, look, I have a rule. I have a few rules. Like, how about loving everybody? That's a pretty good rule. I like that one. I have that one. Love
Yeah,
everybody. You know, it's a
yeah,
nice. And
yeah.
because you love everybody, you take care of everybody you meet. This is
Mm,
beautiful.
mm,
This is Buddhism. To me,
mm,
Buddhism is the way of the heart.
mm. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. That's interesting. Okay, so for my channel that haven't heard of you, I would like to play just if I can show share the screen just a little bit. I just want to show the first few seconds of that interview, so people have still some context. I think a lot of people
Okay.
have seen clips of that, and for me, when realizing just putting pieces together. It's a very interesting journey. And then um, your journey up until that point, I would like to hear more about.
Okay.
All right, let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna play like a minute, and then we'll see. You are 28 here. It's 1985, is it?
I'm 31.
Oh, okay, 31. Sorry. Let's just play it. So yeah, that was sort of the thing I wanted to get to. You mentioned that in a few videos, and you were kind of stunned in that situation. Can you put some context to that and what happened there for you?
Okay, so I didn't know what enlightenment was when I was interviewing him. And I sat down in that chair and I lost my mind. All I could do was read the questions, and I did not know what was before the word I was saying or what was after. I had totally gone into no mind.
Mm,
And so I asked the question and I didn't fully listen to his answer. I started asking the question again in a different way.
mm,
And he leaned forward and he said, "You're not listening to me." And it just blew me apart. It blew my mind apart. It
mm.
was, I'd never experienced anything like it. I realized I was in the presence of something I'd never met before. It was amazing and frightening.
Oh, really? That's
Mm.
frightening.
Well, you're on camera right now.
Yeah.
I'm on camera right now. Now, we were in a room with 25 people, and all of a sudden I've lost my mind, and I'm supposed to be being a journalist, you know, and I've lost my mind, and I'm trying to interview this guy.
Mm. It's very subtle, though. You can't really tell that you're losing your mind, but maybe internally was a.
I'm a good actor.
Yeah, I mean, because as I understand, you've been quite successful up until that point in a more of a business sense, and so I want to understand more about that journey, your sort of early life. I mean, I'm kind of mid that journey myself right now, and I would like to understand more your sort of early spirituality and mind work in a way.
So at that stage, I'd already retired. I was successful enough in business to retire. I didn't have to work ever again. I had a multi-million-dollar company that I owned as a publishing company in Fremantle, West Australia. But after that interview, I realized I had to become a nobody. I got his story about being ordinary. I got what he was talking about. You've got to be a nobody. Everybody thinks they're special. But to play the game of higher consciousness, you've got to become a nobody. And so I walked into my companies a year and a half out of that interview, after that interview, and I just gave my companies to my staff, the whole lot, even the furniture, out of 14 offices. And I then took my shoes off and commenced to walk around Australia barefoot for 4 years to find my heart, because I realized as a businessman, I'd lost it. In that process, I became ordinary. I became a beggar. I became less than instead of more than, which I'd spent my life doing, becoming more than. And in that ordinariness and that nothingness, I found my heart. I found unconditional love. And that changed my whole life, because then I moved into service to humanity. I went back to school, trained as a naturopath, trained as a psychotherapist. So I had some tools to help people with, and basically served heart from then on, helping people, being in service. And so he changed my life incredibly, from being a hard-nosed, successful businessman who was actually headed towards politics to someone who really cared about other human beings and wanted to take care of them.
Yeah, yeah, that's powerful. So, what was your sort of initial introduction to these topics then, like early on?
Oh, this is going to blow your mind. You mean, how did I get involved with Rajneesh in the first place?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And also just spirituality. I mean, maybe he was the first initiation for you.
no. We got to go back. We got to go back.
Yeah, please go back.
I took sannyas 3 years earlier, I think, something like that. And I had a girlfriend who I was engaged to be married to, who was using heroin, and I didn't know it. And as a publisher, I was an anti-drug campaigner at that time. I used to put out a magazine against drugs, or how to understand drugs, to all the rehabilitation centres in West Australia and all the doctor's surgeries. And I discovered that she was tasting heroin on weekends. And I was very righteous in those days and arrogant. And I asked her, I said, I can't live with you anymore. You've got to leave. I don't want to be with a drug addict. And she flipped right out. She was a strong woman, used to run restaurants. And she smashed everything in the house and stormed out, took her gear. And I looked around and it was devastation. But she left. Anyway, I'm downtown the next day, and I'm in my local hotel having lunch, and a couple of police officers who I knew, who I'd bought beers for in the past, came up to me and said, "We've heard that there is a contract out on your legs. Someone wanted to break my legs. And we've heard that the contract has been put out on you by a drug dealer who happened to be the husband of my girlfriend." She'd left him years before. But the story gets thicker. She had gone to him and told him that I had thrown her out and that I'd beaten her, which didn't happen. I am very, very against violence to women in any circumstances. Anyway, he got so disturbed by it, he hired 2 thugs to break my legs.
Oof.
And so I left home immediately and went and stayed with friends down in Fremantle. And that night, actually, my house was broken into and vandalised, probably by these 2 guys. And I had nothing to do on that weekend, so I decided to do a Rajneesh group at the Rajneesh Centre in Fremantle. And it was an encounter group, and it was 2 days long. And during that group, I had a vision, and I'm not the sort of guy who has visions. I'm so pragmatic, it's not funny. And in the vision, I'm looking down a big water tunnel, a big water pipe that so big you can walk down it. And at the end is this little Indian man going like this. And it was Osho. He was calling me. And I went, okay. So I applied for sannyas immediately.
Oh, wow.
Because I was called. And I became a sannyasin, and that upset a great deal of people, my family, my staff, the sannyasins in Fremantle, because I wasn't a hippie, I was a businessman. And I came with a different set of rules. And so they didn't want me to take sannyas, so they made me do kundalini and dynamic meditation every day for 6 months before they'd let me sign up. I found out afterwards I didn't have to do that. I found out I could have just written away for a sannyas. But
really?
I did write away for sannyas eventually and got given the name Vishrant, which means relax or restful, because when I wrote to the ranch asking for sannyas, I told them I'd like to come there and help them run it. And they sent me back this name, which says relax, take a break, Prem Vishrant.
That is so funny.
It is so funny, but that's how I got attracted to Osho, simply because 2 thugs who eventually got caught by the police and the drug dealer actually got put into jail. That eventually happened. And my girlfriend came back to live with me and gave up heroin. So it's a happy ending. But it was bizarre, the circumstances that I had to go through to get introduced to Osho.
Interesting. So, because I was in Australia, and I guess he was already quite famous, so he wasn't actually there. It was other that run that group for him, I guess.
Yeah, it was a man called Indivar who was the guy that introduced Osho to Australia, I think. He was he was a psychologist, and he was one of Osho's sannyasins, and I think he introduced Osho to Australia. He was a great guy. He ran a good group.
Yeah. Is he still around?
I believe so.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, these topics are very interesting. Like, it's another sort of generation, and then for me, it's just seeing this in the periphery. So very interesting to get some details. So then what? Like, you got introduced in Australia, and then you went to Oregon or India first?
I jumped on a plane just after I took sannyas and went to America, to Oregon, and that was great. But the first year I was there, he was in silence because he'd been in silence for 3 years. And so I'd go to all his satsangs, and I entered his mystery school and did 4 months mystery school, but he wasn't really talking. So it was all in silence. And I got a taste of him, but it was only just a little bit of a taste. But I liked the encounter. I liked the mystery school. So I went back the following year again in 85, and that was a totally different adventure, because now I could feel him. I was more open and I could actually feel his presence. And so I wanted to talk to him because he was going to be my guru. I wanted to talk to him, but you couldn't talk to him. There was like 3,000 or 4,000 people there in satsang. And so, being a publisher, I was also a journalist. I rang up the New York Bulletin because the ranch was being threatened by the National Guard, by the local politicians. And I spoke to the bulletin and said, look, I'm a journalist. I'm from Australia. I'm here at the ranch right now. Would you like to hire me? And they said, yes. And I said, I need you to send a notification of that to the press office here. They sent that. And then I got given an interview with Osho. And that
Wow.
interview you showed at the beginning was the interview that I
Yeah.
did with him as a
Yeah.
result of getting that press card.
That's interesting. Wow.
Mm.
That's very interesting. So the mystic school and Osho's techniques. I've come to learn that part of a teacher's role is to sort of poke the ego quite a bit.
Yeah.
uh, so
Awakened
yeah, talk.
teacher is awakened teacher is a destroyer. They're not here to make you comfortable. They're here
Mm,
to take things off you, not give you anything
yeah,
because you've already got too much.
yeah.
It's about becoming less than, not more than.
Mm, mm. So what did Osho do? Like this mystic school, and then yeah, Osho's techniques. Can you dive deeper into that a bit?
I did 4 months then again. So this is 8 months altogether straight in mystery school. And I did encounter groups. My main teacher was a guy called Tirtha, Ananda Tirtha. And I liked him because he could see me and he was prepared to tell me what he could see. And in Australia, I'd run out of people who could see me or prepared to tell me what they could see. They just couldn't. I was too tricky. But this guy could see me. So I chose him as my teacher as
Mm,
far as being undone. And I
mm,
stayed with him for ages. I ended up living with him in Italy for 5 months in 89, no, yeah, no, 87. Yeah, I spent
mm,
5 months with him there. And that was amazing. He took me apart. He
mm,
just stripped me. And it was brilliant because I was such a big ego. I was such a big somebody, and I needed to become a nobody. And he helped introduce that to me.
mm,
Let's be a nobody. We're not going anywhere.
mm.
Just be a nobody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how more sort of specific? Give some example how he could do that in a way.
Well, I would put my opinions out about subjects,
Mm,
which would be basically showing myself off, and he'd challenge it. It was
mm,
encounter. Encounter group is basically you're challenged on what you're saying, what you're believing. And so you can actually possibly see a different point of view and see yourself more clearly. And I already had the understanding that there was two ways of raising your consciousness levels, because to raise your consciousness levels, you have to see through your mind. One
mm,
is witnessing the mind with the silent witness, and the other is encounter, where people tell you what they can see. People who can tell you what they see, and you go, okay. And he was my main teacher in that, and he was wonderful for me. I have so much gratitude to him for the time that I spent with him at the ranch and also in Italy.
mm, interesting.
But when
Yeah.
you ask me for techniques, man, have you ever been involved in full encounter? I think I did 9 years of it or longer. I did 9 years before I became a sannyasin because I was already into encounter therapy before I met Osho. And then I did another, I don't know, 7 years with him. So there's a lot of years of encounter.
Yeah, yeah,
I loved it. I loved it.
yeah.
It's like up until I started Encounter when I was 19 years old, I used to like to blue. I'd be on the streets, I'd be out at pubs, I'd be bluing people, with
Mhm.
their fists and feet. And all of a sudden, I find Encounter where people are telling each other what they think aggressively and no one's getting hit. It was brilliant.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, because I've been thinking more deeper, I guess, around teachers lately. I've had my own sort of a journey around teachers, and what would you say is sort of important? Because there's a lot of unawakened teachers as well, I think. Um, so what would you say is like important for kind of someone like me on the path on the journey? What should you watch for and watch out for when taking on a teacher?
So once I started holding satsang, I realized that people had to trust me. Otherwise, I couldn't take them into the unknown. So what I did is I've allowed people to live with me for the last 25 years so they can watch me and make sure I'm walking my talk. And what's more, making sure that they can feel the presence 24 hours a day around me. Because someone who's fully awake has a presence around them 24 hours a day. That's the only possibility of telling if someone's awake, because anyone can do the right hand gestures, use the right tone of voice, sound holy, dress in robes, but only someone who has a presence 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is awake. And so because I needed people to trust me, because I'm taking them into the unknown, I had people live with me and watch me and see what I was like, see if I was walking my talk.
So you kind of have to meet the teacher in person. Online teachers wouldn't be recommended?
They can be, but you probably need to have a talk to some of their followers and see what, you need to check it out. A seeker needs to be a doubter. You've got to be a doubter to be a seeker. You can't have faith in anything because you've got to undo everything. And we undo everything by challenging belief systems. And so I was a doubter before I met Osho. I was a seeker since I can remember, since I was a little boy. I was always challenging everybody on everything they said. And that's what's needed. You need to challenge and find out. And so if you're doing online satsangs, it's not a bad idea to talk to people who have been around that teacher for quite a while and see what they experience around that teacher. There is a lot of misunderstanding around spiritual teachers, though. Some spiritual teachers are actually just into psychology. They're into helping people, work their problems out and have better lives, making them more comfortable. A spiritual teacher who's awake is not here to make you comfortable. They're here to teach you unconditional surrender. And that can only be done by making you uncomfortable, by creating a form of chaos around you so you can practice let go. And there's this mistake that people think that spiritual awake teachers are supposed to be like psychologists where they rescue you. There's no rescuing. You're not being rescued. You're being taken apart so you can get free. And Osho was a chaos creator. And I am a chaos creator because in chaos, we learn to let go. In chaos, we learn to surrender. And that's all we need to learn. All you need to learn to be ready for enlightenment is unconditional surrender, nothing else. But we learn that through practice. We don't learn it through understanding. Understanding doesn't help you. You actually have to practice it.
Yeah. There's been some quite uncomfortable moments surrounding my teachers in the Vipassanas. Yeah. You also had a near-death experience. It's seemed quite intense, and it was part of your heart-opening journey. Almost drowned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about that?
I've nearly drowned a few times. Both times while diving with aqualungs. One, I was cave diving and I was going through the caves and I got caught in a cave and I ran out of air while in a cave underwater. And I had to surrender. I had to let go of my tanks and I had to get to the get out and survive. That one wasn't so major. But in another adventure, when I was actually coming back on the surface, I'd ran out of air. So I was coming back on the surface towards the boat that was about 1 kilometre away from where I was diving. And I was on the surface and there was a fair bit of swell and I was using a snorkel, but I was low in the water because I was carrying a tank and weights. And I took a lung full of water into both lungs filled up with water because I'd gone below the water line and I'd used a snorkel. And I went to kick to get to the surface, and both legs cramped up at once. And it was like this voice came in my head, and it was so calm and it was so peaceful. And it said, if you panic now, you're going to die. That's all it said. It didn't say anything else. And I just relaxed inside myself, let go of my tank, let go of my weight belt, got to the surface, because without the weight belt and tank, I was buoyant because I was wearing a wetsuit. And I coughed out all the water out of my lungs, and I managed to get back to the boat. But without that intervention, and I don't know where that came from, it was like my life had been saved. And that was one time. But another time, I was lost at sea. A lot of it has to do with the ocean, because I used to be an avid diver and sailor. I got lost at sea during a cyclone. I went out in a runabout to meet a yacht, and we were going to go diving together. I ended up 60 miles off the coast in a runabout. It had hit something in the water and it sunk. And I was in this boat that had sunk, and I had a life jacket on, and I was with my girlfriend, and it was really, really bad because I knew we were going to die. I could see two big hammerhead sharks circling the boat. It was only a matter of time before we were going to die. And we both got hypothermia because we were in the water for 18 hours. And I looked across at my girlfriend, who I ended up marrying, this one. I felt so much regret because I realized she was going to die because I was the one who didn't check the weather before we went out, because a cyclone had hit, and we were caught in the cyclone 60 miles off the coast in the middle of nowhere in a sunken boat being circled by sharks. But the moment that deep regret hit me, I had this explosion of unconditional love appear, which I'd never, ever experienced before. And it was just so magnificent. And it changed everything in me eventually. It took time, but it changed everything in me, because I realized that was worth more than anything else I'd ever had. This unconditional love. And so the story went on that we were eventually rescued, but that was another thing as well. That was a bizarre event, because I'd gone to the back of the boat to try to undo the outboard motor because it was sinking us, and I was going to drop the motor in the ocean. The echo sounder was telling me that we were in water deeper than 5,000 feet. And so we were over the continental shelf. And as I was taking the motor off, and I couldn't get it off because it was too damn big and I didn't have the tools. It was a high-powered motor. I looked over and I looked down into the water, and it was like there was a ship underneath my boat. There was a ship, and I could see all the portholes in it. And it was huge. It was like 100 feet or more long, and it was underneath my boat. I thought, well, that's really odd. What's a ship doing underneath my boat? At that point, for some reason, I passed out and went to sleep in the water. I had a life jacket on, so I was still floating. And when I came conscious again, it was like something else took over the search. It wasn't me. I wasn't there. Something else gave a reverse compass bearing to an oil tanker that was 20 miles away, and the oil tanker eventually came and found us at 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was like some kind of intervention occurred, some bizarre intervention, because we were supposed to die. There was no way we were going to survive. It was like a miracle happened.
Seems like God to me, if you want to use that term. Seems like you're supposed to do the work you're doing through these experiences.
Sometimes I think that, but I don't know. I don't. I don't see myself in any way as special. I am you. You are me. We are one.
Yeah. For me, that's God in a way, or whatever we want to call it.
Well, if awareness becomes aware of itself, you find yourself as the universe. You find yourself as every particle in the universe
Mm,
without a you. And for me, I found every particle in the universe as love
mm,
without a me.
mm,
And I guess that's the definition of God, everything.
mm. Yeah.
And so sometimes I look at that, and that's why I used to get called Bhagwan, which I don't allow people to call me anymore because it creates too much separation.
Mm,
Because basically you're experiencing yourself as the definition of God,
mm,
everything in every
mm,
particle of the universe.
mm.
We are that, not just me, all of
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
We're all that.
yeah,
We're all beingness or
yeah,
God or truth, whatever you want to call it.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I think that's why Buddhism is so attractive for the West in a way, because it doesn't really talk about God. God is very tainted word, I guess.
Very.
Yeah, and but in essence, I do feel they are pointing at the same thing. If you go deeper into Christianity or all the religions, seems like they're pointing at the
Yeah,
same
and
thing.
the thing I don't like about religions is belief systems.
Mm,
I don't buy any belief systems ever. If it's
mm,
not my own direct experience, as far as I'm concerned, it's not real.
mm,
I think belief systems are used to imprison people.
mm. Yeah,
So I don't ask anyone to ever, ever, ever believe me. You find out for yourself. I'll point to where you can have a look, but you find out for yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard this looking at some Rinpoche, Tibetan Rinpoche the other day, and it's such a beautiful sort of quote. Say, whatever Buddhist teachings, meditation, breathwork, whatever it is, uh, always have to erode itself. And so the last obstacle before the final awakening is Buddhism itself.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I find that very. So even the teacher in a way have to be is one of the last obstacles as well, I guess.
absolutely. For
Yeah.
me, the last obstacle was helper thoughts. The thoughts that were measuring how far I'd gone, how much
Mm,
I was absent. And I
mm,
realized it, and I realized those thoughts are keeping the ego alive.
mm,
And so they were also denied, they were also surrendered.
mm.
All
Yeah.
understandings have to be surrendered, everything has to be surrendered. Everything for God or truth, whatever you want to call it, and nothing for you. That's the only deal in town. There is no other deal.
Mm, yeah. So tempting to it's very subtle thoughts, and very tempting to hold on to the smallest thing, right? And scary to let go.
Well, that's the ego trying to survive. So it hangs on. In my case, it was hanging on to helper thoughts,
Mm,
thoughts that it thought were helping. And I realized once my mind realized that it just surrendered them as well
mm,
because it knew the answer was surrender. It
mm,
didn't recognize that the helper thoughts was where the ego was still hanging out, the last bastion.
mm. Yeah. So getting back a little bit to Osho. So you spent time with him in Oregon and then in India as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
was a bit later.
Yeah, 1989, I was there for 5 months just before he died.
Mm.
I left because I got very ill. I was eating street food for
Ah.
5 months and I ended up with all the amoebas and every other thing you can get. And I thought, do I want to go to an Indian hospital or would I rather go back to Australia and go to Australian hospital? So I jumped on an aeroplane and went back to Australia. But
Mm,
I knew he was dying. I could see it clearly, the way he was walking, the way he was talking. He's just gone, gone, gone. And he did die shortly after I left, a month and a half, I think.
mm,
And that broke my heart because
mm,
he was my master,
mm.
and he had opened up a different life for me when I
Yeah.
took sannyas with him.
Mm. Yeah, in that conversation between you and Swaha, you both mentioned to be very confused after his death. So yeah, tell me about the following sort of month and years. What happened for you?
Um, I gave up on enlightenment completely. Up until that point, I was still going for it. But I gave up on enlightenment completely and just concentrated on the way of the heart, which is the practice of being open under any circumstance, whether you're being attacked or whether you're giving fire, to stay open. Because in openness, we perceive unconditional love. In closure, in defensiveness, we don't perceive it.
Mm.
And so in service of heart, I remained open. And anything that closed me, I examined and undid. And so once again, it was a great undoing process for 8 years until the Advaita Vedanta teachers came to West Australia. And I thought I'd go down and have a look at them because they were claiming to be enlightened. And I wanted to see what it was like to be in the field of another enlightened person. I watched one of them on YouTube, and I went, I don't even like this guy. I don't even like what he's talking about. He doesn't look enlightened to me. He just looks like a bloke, you know. Because I was just Osho. Osho, look, was on a throne and he was dressed like a prince, you know. It's like, and so I had a false understanding of what enlightenment looked like. Anyway, I went down to south, 400 kilometers south of Perth to Denmark, and this guy was holding a retreat down there. And I wasn't that interested, but I went along anyway. And the moment he walked in the door, I lit up and found myself as the universe again.
Oh, really? Wow.
His presence was enough to initiate what Osho had started again.
Interesting.
The fire grew in me for enlightenment again. That thirst to get free, that thirst to come home. Everything was consumed by it. And so any teacher who had any presence that came anywhere near West Australia, I was there in their satsangs. I was hosting them. I was driving them around. I was feeding them. I was getting as close as I could. And eventually, with one of them, during a retreat, some 12 months later, awakening occurred, and it has been that way now for 25 years. No sense of somebody talking to you, just nothingness talking, and the sense of being everything at once.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was very surprised.
Talk to me a little bit more about the state of awakening, or being awakened. In Buddhism, there is different sort of levels. You have the stream enter, and then once the returner, and then the non-return, and the arahant, and then there's different jhanis. Yeah. So, what does that all mean from your perspective, in a way? Like, what are the different levels? And
so my mind rests in profound contentment in beingness, blissed out most of the time. Which means I have no motivation to do anything really, because I'm profoundly content. But what is there is a one motivator, and it's love. And out of love, I'm talking to you. Out of love, I hold satsang for people. Out of love, I help people, because love is the motivator that motivates this. But I would say that at the moment, I'm in a state called Sahaja Samadhi, which is an enlightened state. It's called the natural state. And this is a state I'm in most of the time, all day long, all night long. Sahaja Samadhi. It's very beautiful, but there's nobody here. People say, "Oh, I love that." Yeah, but you don't get to make it to enlightenment. The eye doesn't make it to enlightenment. It drops, along with the survival mechanism, drops. And so for 25 years, I haven't experienced any fear, because fear is the main survival mechanism for the body. And I haven't experienced any fear, which is really nice. And my mind is flatlined. It doesn't talk to itself. Like as I'm talking to you, it's silent. And if you were to sit next to me here, you'd feel the silence
Mm.
because it's profound,
Mm.
which is the same silence I experienced when I spoke to Osho. Same. No different. Same.
Mm. Something I've been wondering a little bit about is the um, sort of spiritual work or this shadow work, or what do you want to call it, the emotional part of stuff. When you met the Advaita teachers there, you already been doing the work for many years, right? And been around Osho. Someone that's sort of completely new on the path and haven't done any emotional work in a way, would they still be able to get to that state immediately just by meeting them, or is it too much sort of blockages?
No, I think the reason that I was able to find beingness in the presence of those teachers is because my mind was ready. It had actually done the work on itself. It had taken itself apart.
Mm.
I had been a nobody for 8 years, and I
Mm.
had been a beginner. You see, what people do is they collect spiritual knowledge and think that somehow that will help them. But what it makes them is someone who knows. And
Mm.
someone who knows is actually closed and stuck. The best way to be a seeker is to always be a beginner, always be right at the beginning, at the start. And then existence can show you everything. The moment you think you know, you're actually lost.
Mm.
And because of the way we were brought up at school, where we had to collect knowledge and repeat it, that's what most seekers do. And this is the biggest spiritual trap there is, the collection of knowledge,
Mm.
rather than the practice of let go and acceptance.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I try to teach people how to let go and accept life by setting up devices that they can surrender into. So I contradict myself quite a bit, as Osho did, but it's deliberate. It's to help people let go, in the presence, in the Buddha field.
Mm.
Because it's easier to do all of this work in a Buddha field than it is to do it at home with your wife.
Mm. Yeah.
It's just much easier.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky. I had so many awake people in my life because they came to Australia, and I knew that they probably wanted to be hosted. So I'd contact them, tell them I'd be the one. I'd drive them around. I'd house them. I'd feed them, and they liked that. And so did I.
Mm.
I remember one night, this awake teacher came into my house, and I gave him a bedroom, and the bedroom backed onto another bedroom. And I remember I went and sat in that room all night with my back to the wall because I knew his head was facing me, and I was in Buddha field. It's like I was a total fanatic, I was a, I was a, I was an energy junkie.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's I think you guys talked about it, but I think it seemed to be one of the little bit obstacles of Sannyasin's closed door show that didn't really get all the way there in a way because they were so addicted to the energy around him.
I would agree with that. I think they were addicted to getting high,
Yeah.
because once you surrender, you can get high in the energy field of someone who's awake.
Mm.
But the thing about it is you have to do the work.
Mm.
You can't get high and then go out and start contracting against the world and think that you've got somewhere.
Mm.
You actually have to stop contracting against the world. You have to stop resisting. And that comes with the acceptance of life as it is, and let go. And so my whole process was undoing any belief system that had an expectation on it that when it wasn't met, caused contraction or resistance in me. Everything was undone. It was like a great undoing.
Mm.
And I loved it. I loved doing it. I liked undoing myself. It wasn't hard work for me because I enjoyed it.
Mm.
It was like I was climbing a mountain and I was taking gear off so I could climb the mountain easier.
Mm. Yeah.
Here's a good one for you. You're going up in a hot air balloon and you want to go higher. So you start throwing stuff out of the hot air balloon. And eventually you realize there's nothing more to throw out. So you take your clothes off and you throw them out. And then you realize you want to go higher. So you throw yourself out.
Ah, that is beautiful. That is amazing. I think that was just, I'm enlightened now. That's very beautiful. That's cool. All right, so we are almost 1 hour in. Just sort of the state of the world I find very little bit troublesome right now. I'm still not enlightened, so I'm still affected by the world. And I suspect you can see an increased amount of seekers to yourself and to others. What would you say, sort of in general, to people that are out there seeking in the West mainly right now? Some recommendations.
I do have some advice. Stop taking sides and accept life as it is. In taking sides, we're going into resistance. We're putting ourselves back into lower consciousness. Stop taking sides, accept this is what life is at the moment. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just what is. Be at peace. Stop fighting with what is.
Yeah. And some specific technique, some of your favorite general techniques. You have something to recommend?
You breathe out, and on the outward breath, you die. Because dead men don't care about anything. Neither do dead women.
Yeah.
I use the outward breath as to help me let go of everything many, many times, thousands of times probably, because in the outward breath, we can die to what is. And when we die to what is, there's peace. And that doesn't change the world. The world stays the same, but the world is always going to have chaos. There's always going to be people fighting people. But you can find peace if you can accept this is what is, without resistance.
Yeah. Yeah, I starting to see something like that. Still a journey.
You know, what happens is people shake their fist at God and say, you got it wrong, God.
Yeah.
Well, all you're hurting is you. God's not listening.
Why not?
Why
Wants
not?
to
Because
listen to
God
me.
doesn't exist as a guy sitting on a cloud strumming a harp. It's not how it is. God is everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Everything is God. You know,
So,
this idea that there's a you and a God is ridiculous. We are God. We are everything. We are everywhere.
so what is this then? This life here on planet Earth? Is it
It
sort of an
seems like
experiment?
no, I don't think so. I just think it's a good place to have hell. But that hell is created by the way we think, not by reality. Our resistance to life creates hell. Our acceptance of life, our yes, in other words, creates heaven. It's up to you. Yes, heaven, no hell.
Yeah.
You have the power to create your reality.
Yeah, definitely. So will you return to Earth later, or are you done?
I don't have a choice. I don't think I can come anywhere back here. Already gone. You're talking to a dead man.
Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you, dead man. Very grateful for this conversation.
I've enjoyed talking to you too, Ramus.
Oh, all right.
Thank
Thank you so much.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I have some interesting projects coming up. Maybe I will reach out later on. It's in this space, and maybe I'll pop by Perth at some point as well.
You are very, very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, scene.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
Have a good one.